Let's welcome our session speakers for the panel, please. And as they do that, as you know, we're running a little late. We'll see how the panel runs. If it does, support it, we'll end at 10:55 and start a break at 10:55 and come back at 11:15. But let's see how it goes. So the plan is for people in-house to come up to the two mics here, please. Jeff, I think these mics are behind the columns, behind the posts. We can't see them. And online, please submit your questions. What we'll do in-house, we'll take questions from both microphones. You're allowed one backup question at that time. And then if you have repeat questions, we can do it. And after the in-house questions, we'll go to online questions, and Corey will navigate those questions for us. So let's start in-house. Any questions in-house, please? Come up to the mics. Don't be shy. This is an opportunity that may not be repeated. So let's see. All right, here's a person who has been with us since 2010, most times since 2010. Please, your question.
Yes, I appreciate the opportunities that SBIA puts out for us to have these meetings.
Thank you.
One of my questions is related to the missed goal date communications, and are those typically done for just on the first cycle review, or will those communications come like if you're in the second review cycle or additional review cycles?
Thank you. So high level, the question is, when do we engage with the missed goal date communications? It's not limited to the first cycle. Anytime we miss a goal date and even carries into PASs and those type of things, that we'll be reaching out and communicating with the applicants.
Thank you.
Someone is bravely advancing to a mic. Question, please.
Yeah, hi, Ted. There's a follow-up to this missed goal date. We understand the agency is communicating with us when they are missing the goal date, and they tell us because of some complex issue, we are still reviewing it and we'll get back to you. We may be missing the goal date. My request is if they tell us what is this complex issue is, because we are in suspense what happened to our application. So I know the complex issues could be still under review at agency level, but at least they can share us some information it's related to what. Because when management asks us what is the issue, we have nothing to say. We say, okay, this complex issue. Thank you.
So the high level question is trying to communicate more. And that's exactly what the transparency program and the pilot is all about. I won't say that every situation we can disclose the nature of the issue, but the goal clearly is to try to get together, determine when it's at all possible, and communicate that. And so certainly more and more information should be flowing from the project managers. If you haven't had a discussion recently on the application, then I suggest that you start with contacting the regulatory project manager, and then he or she can see what can be provided to you. If it is one of these unique cases where nothing else can be said, they may be able to sort of explain it in that context. Thank you.
Thank you. Let's go to online, please.
All right, this first question is for Ted. Is the transparency pilot only offered to specific companies, or is it offered to all?
This question has to do with the scope of the transparency pilot. It's offered to anybody who's in that missed goal date space. And again, there may be certain cases where we will start communicating in advance of the missed goal date.
Thank you for that. My next question for you, Ted. Can there be more than one point of contact listed in the 356H where the RPM could be a follow-up with a backup contact?
Not sure I heard all of it. It has to do with the backup contact. The regulatory project manager, if he or she is not there, then they do a very good job of sort of denoting who's covering for them. And then we also post sort of a listing of the regulatory project managers and their structure. So if you're not hearing from the project manager, the person's out on extended leave, you certainly can contact their designated sort of alternative, or there's a team leader denoted, and certainly you can go up the supervisory chain too. But start with that project manager and their coverage and work your way up. Thank you.
Thank you. We'll go to the question in-house, please.
Yeah, this is regarding the missing goal dates communication. So as per the GDF 3 plan, review plan, there was a commitment or a indication that mid-cycle review status will be updated. So on some of the ANDAs, we are not receiving the mid-cycle around 5 months. What is the status of the review? Maybe if it is communicated in time, maybe if anything, actions can be taken from our side to miss the goal dates, that can be taken.
Make sure I'm understanding, you're asking about the mid-cycle communication?
Yeah, mid-cycle review status.
Oftentimes, the mid-cycle communication, we're looking at a case where we're in the first cycle of the application. Brand new applications in that first cycle do have some extra communication points built in depending on the type of product. In those cases, there will be the opportunity for applicants to choose the type of mid-cycle communication standard, which is a little bit more of a status update, or there can be the selection of an enhanced mid-cycle communication meeting to get a little bit more input into what's happening with the assessment team. If you're bringing that up in the context of the missed goal dates, oftentimes that's too early in the cycle. There certainly may be some exceptions, but usually you're having that meeting because you've already received the last of the discipline review letters in the first cycle. There's sort of a commitment for both the quality and bioequivalence disciplines to communicate out to you by sort of the mid-cycle plus 1 month. It's the receipt of that that then sort of triggers the mid-cycle communication. So if there is something obvious that's going to cause the missed goal date, that can be flagged in those discussions, but I think that would be rare that early in the cycle.
Thank you.
Okay, something I forgot to mention at the top of the panel session, we will restrict our questions to the content that was presented, and I know sometimes the questions can get pretty specific. At that point, we won't be able to address it because we want to address questions that are beneficial to the entire audience. Okay, anyone else in-house? Please, 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 I'm begging you, this is the opportunity. You came here, you took the effort to come in. So questions, please. Yes, sir, go ahead.
Yeah, I had a question more on approvals. We've been getting approvals from the agency, but we've been noticing that some of the approval letters have been, they've been approved on a certain date, but we've been receiving them 3-4 weeks later. So could you shed some light on that?
I'm not sure I'm capturing the question.
So we've been receiving the approval letters, and
Okay.
they've been dated a certain date, but we've been receiving them actually email receiving it 4 or 5 weeks later. So not sure if there is a reason for the delay.
Okay. When the agency issues an approval on a generic drug application, the regulatory project manager will be issuing the approval that day. It's very rare that it would even sort of extend into the next morning, but if you're seeing a delay, you can certainly contact the regulatory project manager. I don't know, Joe, if you want to add anything to that?
Yeah, it would be, as Ted said, it would be unusual for one to receive that approval letter that far out. Typically, it's sent over via email to the applicant. If you've been provided clearance phase notifications of endorsements for that, and you already know what and you know that you're receiving some kind of approval type of action, I would just reach out to your RPM just to make sure what's going on with that. But yeah, same day, next morning is what I would
Yeah,
expect.
typically that was the case, but lately we just noticed. That's why we were a bit curious on that. That's why. Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Online question, please.
So this next question is for Dr. Shin. Should an RFR be submitted as its own amendment or with the response to deficiencies?
As I mentioned in the presentation, you want to make sure that you submit your RFRs as separate standalone submissions. Some of the reasoning behind that is because it makes it easier for us to also identify whether new information is included or not. When you're submitting it with your CRL responses or your IR DRL responses, it makes it very difficult. And so as a point, separating it out makes it easier for the agency as well. So doing it separately would be my response to that.
Next online.
Thank you. My next question for Dr. Shin. If I receive a not accepted letter for my RFR submission, would I be able to resubmit another RFR?
Yes, and applicants are not restricted to just the one time of submitting an RFR request. If they've received the not accept letter, they have the ability to resubmit again. Again, the big thing here is to make sure that you're minimizing the administrative burden both on the agency as well as the industry. So to get it right the first time goes a long way so that it'll get to the reviewers as well as the original signatory authority to get you that closer to a decision on your matter that you're requesting reconsideration for.
Thank you. And the in-house.
Hi, good morning, Ted. Just one question for you. So if a missed goal date is because of a program error, is that communicated to the applicant, and what can an applicant do to kind of not, like, kind of miss the goal date by a large period of time? How can it be expedited?
The question has to do with the missed goal dates because of a program error. Those are errors that are sort of internal, where the agency had mistriaged the application. And again, put a little advertisement out there. The cover letter attachment can help minimize those. Certainly, if we have one of those, we will communicate to the applicant, here's what's happening. We didn't complete the assessment of this particular study. We've talked to the discipline that's responsible for that study. They think they'll be done, and then we will give you the anticipated completion date for that particular project. So again, it starts with the regulatory project manager to sort of walk through that scenario with you.
Thank you, Ted. You're very popular. Next in-house question, please.
For instances where salts are no longer appropriate placebos, and you may have a generic that's being tested against the biologic, either the generic for the same initial purpose or a generic off-label against the biologic for bioequivalence studies, which subgroup from FDA would you all want those applications submitted to?
That's really not for this forum, and we have to see a little bit more about the product itself. If you think you have a potential generic application and you're trying to get confirmation, there's a lot of information on the web that helps separate out what's a generic, what's not a generic. If you really think that you have a potential generic drug, then you may be able to submit a controlled correspondence to lock that in a little bit more.
Thank you. Let's go to online, please. We reserve you for the next time. Online, please.
Yes, this question is for Dr. Zhang. What are considered as major amendments other than the CRL for RFR considerations?
Can you repeat, please?
Of course. What are considered as major amendments other than CRL for RFR consideration? And when else would you receive a major amendment?
So I think the question is regarding like DRL and major amendment and major CRL. So you know the first thing we can do is the classification of the major deficiency.
Is it on?
You can go ahead. Could you answer again, please?
Okay.
We didn't quite hear.
So I think the question is regarding like DRL, how to classify the DRL deficiency and the CRL deficiency of major amendment. So the first thing we do, is, after we receive our original submission, so we conduct our review and have issued the deficiency. So in that part, so we will based on the deficiency, the nature of deficiency, we will classify it as major or minor. That is the DRL part. And then after, you submit the response to DRL response. And then in that case, if the issue has been resolved, then it's gone. But however, if the deficiency is still there, and based on the classification and the nature of the issues, and you can see from the AND amendment submission guidance. So if the deficiency classification is still there and considered as major, then we will issue the major CRL. And after, if the deficiency has been issued as a major, whatever is major DRL or major CRL, and after the amendment or response came back, so it will be classified as major or minor, as issued in the DRL or CRL. And at that stage, when the response or amendment came back and the classification will be already be there is major or minor, and at that stage, you can also submit a request, RFR request, to reclassify this amendment. Thank you.
Could I also piggyback on that, a response to that question as well? Outside of just RFRing a major CRL, there are other ways that an RFR could come in for a major. If you submit an unsolicited amendment and you receive some kind of acknowledgement letter that states that that unsolicited amendment was deemed major, an applicant would have the ability to RFR that acknowledgement letter that states the major amendment. So that would be another avenue where an RFR could come in for a major. I want to also add, just as Dr. Zhang mentioned in his presentation, he's absolutely correct. IRs and DRLs are not regulatory actions. But as I mentioned in my presentation, you can't RFR an IR or a DRL, which is the reason why you need to wait to receive the acknowledgement letter. It's at the acknowledgement letter stage where an amendment is deemed major or minor. And at that point, you could request reconsideration for those particular items.
Yeah, I want to follow on that, because while we consider DRL, you cannot just request reclassification for DRL, as Dr. Shin mentioned, because it is not considered as a regulatory action taken by FDA. However, what you can do, because the nature of the DRL, it is only a temporary. It is the purpose of the DRL is just trying to communicate the deficiency, the possible deficiency, some preliminary thoughts on possible deficiencies. So for that reasons, it is not like eligible for a RFR request. What you can do is, you can submit a DRL response first, and after you receive the acknowledgement letter, and then you can ask reclassify the DRL response from major to minor. Thank you.
Okay, thank you both. I so enjoy these questions where we have multiple participation from the panel. Quite interesting. I hope the person who had a question online got quite a lot of information. Okay, let's go in-house, please.
Good morning. Thank you for the meeting. As a U.S. agent for company, the most frequent question that I receive from my sponsor is that, will FDA extend the timeline to respond to our question after restructuring the FDA system? So my question is that, do you expect to be more missed goal date during the coming year because of the FDA restructuring?
Do you have a question that's not pertinent to restructuring? Did anyone want to answer that, Ted?
I can just say that the agency is fully committed to doing everything possible to continue to advance the program and continue to meet all of the goal dates it has. Obviously, with each application, different things can arise. Some of those arise on FDA's end. We had a question about things that were sort of missed kind of program errors. Other times there's goals that are missed because of things that happen on the applicant's end. So the best thing you can do is really just make sure that you prepare your application correctly. You're telling us the story of your application. So if you want to prevent a missed goal date, make sure that story is very clear. Use the attachment cover letter sheet. That will help us understand what your story is and get those pieces out to the right people. And then if you're in a position where you have reached the point where you're receiving what we just spoke about, the information requests or the discipline review letters, or even reach the point where you have a complete response letter, make sure that you thoroughly respond to those. It's not a race. Getting it back in with us, if it's not done right, is not going to help your overall cause. So do it right, make sure it's clear. And again, you want to show that you've done everything. If you have a sloppy response or you're missing some of the questions, not only can it delay our acceptance, but think about the story you're telling the reviewer. You're showing that you're not careful with your product. You're going to set the reviewer kind of on edge. Right? They're going to be more focused then on your application than maybe they were when it was originally coming up into their workload. So we will continue to work as hard as possible, and we want you to continue to give us the quality submissions. Thank you.
Excellent answer. And in-house? Okay.
And just a clarification on Dr. Shin, what you were saying. Once we get CRL, we respond to, that's a major, we respond, and then once we get the acknowledgement letter, then we submit request for reconsideration. That's what you're recommending, right?
Yes.
So, but in the guidelines, it's written, once you receive a CRL, within 7 calendar days, we submit the request for reconsideration. So.
To answer that question, I want to say there's 2 avenues of how you could address a CRL. The first that you mentioned, CRL is issued, a major CRL, say as an example. An applicant would have 7 days in order to submit an RFR from the CRL date. Another avenue that an applicant may be able to take is to respond to that CRL. And upon sending that response in and receiving an acknowledgement letter, then the applicant is able to also have another time point of submitting an RFR for that acknowledgement letter of that CRL response. So you essentially have 2 points being able to do that. And the RFR guidance does outline that by giving you those 2 scenarios.
Mm-hmm. So when we submit the response to CRL, in that response, can we make the request for reconsideration?
No, as I mentioned before, standalone submissions for RFRs. So if you're going to respond, go ahead and respond, then submit your RFR. If you want to wait for your acknowledgement letter to come in and then respond, and then RFR, that's fine too.
Fine. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. We're up on our time, so no more questions from online. Let's meet back here at 11:15, please. If you have questions for the panel, please try to catch them before they leave the premises. Thank you to our panel.